Hello. It's telling me I'm live, so I must be live. Let me know in the comments if you're watching this evening. How has your January gone? All right, thank God it's February. January just seems to drag on, and the older I get, the longer it seems to take. You know, I don't know about anybody else, and anybody a lot older than me that can tell me that January does get a lot longer as you get older. Just put me out of my misery, just so I know what I'm expecting, you know, in 20 years' time. Yeah, good evening. We're in for a slightly shortened Q&A this evening. I've decided to cut it down to half an hour. I figured that most people are kind of watching for about 15 minutes, so YouTube tells me. Plus an hour is quite a lot to catch up with if you are watching this on catch up. So yeah, there's a little chat window which will pop out somewhere. So click on the little ... If you see that on your screen, if you're watching this on some device, there might be a little expansion menu where you can find your chat window to talk to me. That would be great. And have your questions ready. We've got a question waiting in the wings this evening, but I first want to update you with some exciting news. I just want to get it off my chest. That I have just uploaded my first video of a series called 100 Days of Practice, which isn't my idea. It is an idea that has been going for many years, I think, and musicians in lots of different genres taking part. My original inspiration was Vicky Swan and Johnny Dyer. Thank you very much, lovely people. Vicky posts every year, and I noticed that Johnny's been doing it too, but I hadn't been following him. So yes, they're over on Instagram, so do go and give them a like and a follow. They are fantastic musicians, multi-instrumentalists and singers, and yeah, it's just wonderful stuff that they're coming up with. I recently spent a couple of weeks ago, I was at Halsey Manor for their open house. You might have seen me posting about that, and they were both there as our house parents, kind of organising the rabble that we were. I think they had quite an easy job, but you know, they were there to do their own work as well, as we all were. Yeah, so I have decided to do this mini project in the build-up to my album recording, which I talked about last month. So if you're new here this evening and you haven't caught up with that, then I'm doing an album this year, and I've decided I'm doing it, and it's a bit mental, but it's not really. Lots of people make albums, but for me, it's a big deal. I don't know why. I think just artistically, creatively, maybe everyone goes through this process of bearing your soul and feeling like you want to do the work justice. You know, you don't want to just put anything out there. It has to have a reason, or certainly that's how I feel about it. And yeah, so I will talk a little bit more about that over the next half an hour. But yes, I uploaded a new video kind of introducing this mini project within a project, the 100 Days of Practice. And the idea behind it is that there's this feeling that has been holding me back from recording in earlier years, is because I don't feel I'm good enough. I'm not where I want to be before I lay stuff down. And it's realizing, A, that I am good enough, but I can be better. Everyone can always be better, but I'm out of practice. I haven't practiced what I've preached for so many years, and I really need to up my game, essentially, because I have proven to myself recently. I went on some workshops. I was at a Riccardo Tesi and Anne Leopold workshop in October at Halsey, and we did some really challenging stuff, and I really lived up to that. And I think with practice of that material and the techniques that I was shown, I could be better. You know, that's the level up that I'm looking for. And I've been on this plateau now for about 5 years, really. You know, there's always micro improvements, but in terms of really going for it, yeah, I've not worked hard to do that. So that's my plan. And I hope that it inspires some of you to, you know, take up the gauntlet, if you like, or even just in a really small way, just seeing how I manage to fit practice into my crazy schedule. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing how I do that as well, to be perfectly honest. But if you go and watch that video that I just posted, it'll explain everything about how I plan to do that. Yeah, so let's chat about that. Let's leave some comments on that video. It's also going to be, it is posted on Instagram and Facebook as well, so you can watch within those platforms if you use those, and it's also on YouTube. And I'd love to get your comments on those videos and sort of get a conversation going. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It is very much a big place that I appear online, and I like to sort of have that two-way conversation. And it's always nice to know that people like my channel enough to just kind of subscribe and ring the bell so that you know exactly when I've uploaded a new video, which there's going to be quite a few with this 100 days of practice. So there might be something in that you find interesting and inspiring. Yeah, brilliant. So I've got some couple of people chatting to me at the moment. Tammy, hello, you're a regular. It's nice to see you back. Hope you're well. And Jenna as well is here. Brilliant, fantastic. You can make it this evening. I don't know if your plans had changed. I know that you had a band practice or something, but it's really nice to see you live. Yeah, and I hope it is an interesting project to watch. Personally, for me, I'm always interested in those nitty-gritties of people's lives and professionals and how they make their life run. And I'm always asking questions to people like, you know, literally, how do you do your admin? How do you kind of plan your time? How do you answer emails effectively and efficiently? All those kind of really small details I'm like super wired for. Because I never feel like I quite hit the mark, basically. You know, it's that old chestnut again, you know, I never feel I'm good enough. So it's always looking to see if there's a hack, you know, that's one way of looking at it. And hopefully in this 100 days of practice, there will be some hacks. Because as a teacher, you know, I'm always faced with people that haven't quite had the time. You know, there's been things in their life that they've just not had the time to pick up the instrument and play it. So, and I never play hardball. I'm not that kind of teacher. You know, I am very respectful of the fact that this is a hobby for everybody, you know, and it has to remain fun. Plus it harks back to my days as a flute student at school. That was my first instrument, and that will make an appearance, I imagine, in this 100 days. And yeah, teachers just kind of coming down on you hard for not having practiced. I mean, yeah, it is annoying, but at the same time, what's the point of being annoyed? Because it's not going to change anything, and it's not going to make your student feel any better about it. So I kind of hope that as a teacher going through this journey, it will inspire students to do the practice, but that isn't the point of it. It really is about my development, and I just want to share that with you. So yeah, there might be some things that you can pick up as well, and I look forward to sharing that with you. I've also got Polly and Steve here. Hello, lovely people. Nice that you can make it live, Polly. I'm really happy about that. And Steve, happy birthday for the other day. I know we've got a lesson soon, so it'll be really nice to see you. If I've got anybody watching that doesn't have lessons with me, it's not just my students that chat to me on here. Anybody can. This is completely, you know, my time that I'm giving to you to answer any questions or demonstrate any niggles or fixing anything that you might have in your playing. So please come forth with your questions. I'll kick off in a second with one that we had on Melnet. Yeah, fantastic. In fact, let's do that right now. So I'm heading over to Melnet. I've got a thread called Ask Mel Unbox, and you can leave me questions throughout the month and I pick them up. So we first had a question from Lynn. Now, Lynn is a former student of mine and a friend that I know through Molly dancing and Molly playing that I used to play with Ooze Washers Molly, they've just kind of finished their busy season with the Molly season, and obviously it kicks off with the Morris season as well, so they'll be busy throughout the summer. And Lynn says, I'll read it all out. It's a little bit long, but I'll read it all out. So she said, hi, Mel, I've been off box for a couple of years, but back now and refinding my way round the Melnet site. So I love the idea of this. Just missed, you know, my Q&A. She loves the idea of the Q&A. Just missed this week's, but we'll try and catch up next week. What a great idea. As a non-note reader, just relying on cribbing the left-hand chords in order to learn by ear. Not quite sure what you mean by cribbing, but I just kind of learning and writing down the left-hand chords to kind of jog the memory of what the harmony line was. I'm having a bit of a problem relearning all those really beautiful tunes I used to play pretty well. It's been 2 years and even more since I played them. The old muscle memory is doing its best, and I have a lot of those tunes recorded one way or another, and your own YouTube channel has been brilliant. Any other tips for getting back into the groove? So I thought this was quite a nice, appropriate question to answer, given this 100 days of practice project that I've just launched this evening. So I think you have to make space in your life for your music your learning and your instrument. And I think practice is always kind of, in my head anyway, and maybe other people's, is always come with this kind of air of stubbornness. You don't want to do it. It's boring. It wastes time. You'd rather be doing something else. So for me, on my journey of learning the Melodeon in its entirety from when I very first started, it was always an escape for me. So I guess I was lucky in that sense that I really wanted to learn the instrument, and I happened to be given a spare box, and I kind of picked it up and just made space for it in my life. And because at the time I was going through some pretty bleak mental health issues and stuff like that, it was a really nice kind of escape. And I guess I practiced, but I didn't think of it as practice. And different types of practice is a really good way to get back into the groove. So I personally really love just picking up the box and noodling. Don't go in with any kind of hard concrete ideas of what you're going to do. Just pick it up and see where your fingers lie. Maybe it'll be a chord sequence that you're just jamming around with, and you don't have to think about it at all. Just see where they lie and see what chord sequences appear. And that might mean that triggers you off and think, oh, that's the chord sequence from such and such. So you have a noodle around such and such. I also quite like just making sounds. I'll demonstrate what I mean. It's a bit odd because I don't normally do it in front of an audience, but as a way to reintroduce yourself to your instrument or introduce yourself for the first time, just listening to it and listening to how you can manipulate the sound. We have the beautiful bellows. We are very fortunate in that we can control that dynamic range of the instrument. Not a lot of instruments have that ability. So one of the favorite things that I used to do, or a version of it, was just to sit and try and get, if I'm on a 2-voice setting, MM is good for this because they're both tuned very similarly. And you want to try and get one reed to hum. And you have to be super subtle with your left hand pressure because it will train you to really, really calm down and be very still with your instrument. So you want to try and so the idea with this is to not pressurize the bellows first, but open the button, so push the button down and then pressurize the bellows so that you can really control the start of that reed starting to engage and vibrate. And you're trying to get one to engage. And it's a listening exercise. So you'll be able to hear if 2 are going because you'll hear the vibrato or the tremolo. You'll hear that tremolo in there with the MM setting. So you want to just be able to hear one clear pitch. When you can, try and, hold it. Train yourself to hold that pitch. And then once you are confident holding that pitch, it takes some time. You'll probably waver into 2 pitches, both reeds, and then back to 1. Train yourself to hold that one pitch really quietly. It will literally just be humming. And then go to level 2, bring the second reed in. And depending on the tolerance of your instrument, the quality of it, how well it's tuned, how old it is, you should be able to control that fairly easily after a bit of practice. So I'll bring you a little bit closer because I'm not sure how this will sound. You're on top of my monitor at the moment, so I'm going to bring you down onto my handy bog roll, which is exactly what it is. And the camera just slots into it really, really neatly. There we go. So I'm just going to check what you're seeing. So what I'm doing is, as I say, loose left hand, opening the button. And then I'm starting to engage the pressure. And you can see this instrument is very sensitive, which is what I love about it. But you can see that I can actually move the bellows just about without getting any sound, really slowly. But if I just increase the pressure slightly, I'm going to start getting that little hum. Hopefully you can hear that. It's tiny, tiny, tiny little sound. So that's one reed. If I just engage a bit more pressure from my left hand, I'll get 2. Yeah, and it also increases volume. So you'll get this kind of, like it breaks a barrier somehow, and you get the sound waves start to interact with each other, so you get more volume out of it as well. So a really, really quick example, and try that up and down, on the pull, on the push, different notes. Try it on the left hand with the chord. See if you can engage all 3 reeds of your chord individually. It's a real test of control, and I find it just really meditative. It's like, you might think of it as having no purpose, but it actually sensitizes you as a musician. It sensitizes your touch and your control of the instrument. You'll work out which notes are more giving, which ones are easier to do that with, which ones are a bit more kind of sluggish, usually the lower notes. And if you're on a GC, super sluggish on those low notes. They need a lot of kind of energy to get going because they're very heavy. So yeah, different instruments, different tunings. Do this exercise with it. Now, it's not like you're getting back into playing tunes again, but in terms of just picking up the instrument and enjoying it and spending some time relearning all of that sensitivity and touch, I think it's a really nice exercise. And I think you're doing everything that, listening to tunes round and round and round whilst you're away from the instrument, bringing it all back, bringing back that joy and that love of making music on the Melodeon. And then when you are with the instrument, not being too hard on yourself, just gently coaxing something out of yourself. And you might find you start writing tunes. You might be a writer that doesn't know that they're a writer yet, but this is the kind of process that kind of kickstarts all of that. So there we go. Now I realize that with a shortened thing tonight, I need to be a bit more concise. And there we go. So if we have any more questions, then please throw them at me. I'm going to just go back to the comments. Jenna's said, I actually enjoy practice. I tend to keep things varied though, and just give myself a couple of breaks, and I'm really focused on something. Yeah, I mean, personally for me, I could sit down for 2 hours and this has happened, and it just disappears and I don't realize it's gone because I get really involved with it. Again, I think that's quite a lucky position to be in. It's kind of, it's my job, so I should have the time. I don't. This is part of the reason for the 100 days of practice, is that you would be surprised at how little music I actually make in my job. I've got a project running at the moment, which I love thoroughly because it is a musical project. I am making music all day with young composers who have the most brilliant minds. It's called Composite. We'll be performing the work in April in Nottingham. We're in the studio recording it in March, and we have 3 2-hour workshops with 4 young composers that come from, well, their ideas are genre defying, and the ensemble that I'm part of are musicians that play different genres and kind of all sorts of different stuff. So it's very varied and it's massively challenging, and I have to do a lot of practice for that project. So I'd hope to share some of that with you as well, so that you get to hear my parts. And flute playing, I'm doing a lot of flute playing. I'm playing my B flat, E flat more. This lovely thing on the end has been my workhorse today. I have 2 pieces with that, and it's teaching me to sight read on it, because I never knew what the notes were on my B flat, E flat box. So yes, Composite is amazing, and it means that I get to feel like I'm doing a proper musician's job all day, and I'm completely immersed in it. So every time I did it last year, I'm doing it again this year. But other than that, if I'm teaching, it's a different headspace. It's music for other people. It's kind of, I'm there to take care of other people, is how I feel about it. I'm there to nurture them. And it doesn't feed my learning, if that makes sense. Learning in other ways, learning about how to communicate with people and learning about that individual and what they need. There's always learning, but in terms of my development as a musician, that a lot of time goes into teaching, and it doesn't enable me to do that. So I've tried to kind of tweak the machine a little bit over the last year, try and open up some space in my diary, try and confine my teaching days to certain days of the week so that I have some free time. My brain likes to just have a whole day. I like to look in my diary and go, all right, I've got nothing in, right, let's just sit and make music. And that's what I'm hoping the 100 days of practice is going to help me to do. So there we go. There's that idea. Okay, so Jenna asks, do you have any tips for newer players who are struggling with having the melody and bass not line up? Yeah, it's getting both hands to work together is a real tricky one. I have started recently revisiting a lot of rhythm exercises with my students. It just so happens that a lot of groups and individuals that I'm working with are kind of working on new rhythms they've not played before. So for instance, I always start with 4/4, because so the very first tune I teach is Winster Gallop, because it's every note on the right hand, I've got a slightly cut back version. So all the notes are either crotchets. There's a couple of minims in there, so 2-beat notes. But other than that, yeah, so I start with Winster Gallop so that every press on the right hand has a press on the left hand. So you're learning to match up the hands doing the same thing. That takes practice. Then when we start to move on, we play slightly more tricky, 4/4 tunes, introducing quavers. We don't play on all the quavers. So for instance, Speed the Plough, every other note is accompanied because you have 8 notes in the space of 4 beats, right? So, you're thinking, just incrementally building the difficulty here, starting by playing everything the same, and then everything, let me just see if I can do it. So, da, 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 da. Yeah, so I'm running out of time, so I can't sit here and faff around, but you get the idea is that every other note you do less on the left hand. And then I start to move into different rhythms, and I tend to always go to jigs. So I go to 6/8, because essentially it's still a bass chord pattern, but you have to learn to leave that gap for the 2 and 5. So that's an extra level of complexity. So we just gradually build it up. So I've got a repertoire of tunes that I use to build people and kind of gradually grow them up. But it's nothing out of the ordinary. Bear Dance is one of them, Theme Vanities. Willow Tree is always my first jig. I really like it. I also incorporate some block chords into the bass, so it's not just umcha. We're starting to kind of explore using the instrument in a slightly different way. But yeah, gentle coaxing with something super easy and really kind of explaining the rhythm and getting them to tap it out. So this is what I've started doing, is just going, right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just go with the 1 and the 3. So the 1 and the 3 is where the bass goes. And that's obviously the heavy feel in the bar. That's where we want the emphasis to be. And that's where we match the bass. So what I've started doing, if I pick up my box, is getting people to slap their right thigh with all of the beats, but we're only going to put the bass on 1 and 3. And then after a while, what I say is, let's just play 1, 2, the 2 and the 4, but with the chord. So they start to learn what the offbeat feels like, and then we do it all together. Yeah, and it just helps. I mean, it's a cross-body rhythm because you've got the right hand doing something and the left hand doing something different. And if you can get them to move in their body and take that rhythm on board, you'll be well away. Obviously, after the thigh slap on the right hand, we just kind of start building it up on the instrument. But that has helped so many students recently. So yeah, I'm really happy that I kind of came up with that and discovered it and started using it. Great. Okay, lovely questions tonight, peeps. I'm going to move on to Tammy just because I'm realizing that I've got little time left and I want to try and answer a variety of questions from different people. So Tammy says, I'm assuming that pulsing the bellows must be a control thing, but how do you do it? This is for Kev. We are sat watching together. Hi, beautiful people. Okay, so this is like I see this as a bit like an icing on the cake kind of technique. I know you're playing, so I know that you can pick up a tune, you can play it, your left hand is solid, you know where your basses go, you know where your chords go. I hope that you're nodding along with this. I've seen you play enough. I know that that's what's happening, and Morris has really helped to get that kind of solidity. And if it's not right, then it's your ability to just carry on with it, make it work in a rhythm, and the mistakes start to iron out. Once you've got to that stage, and it takes some time, I mean, we could be talking 2 to 3 years before you feel really solid in that, so if you're not there, don't worry, you will be there, just keep practicing. Then we can start looking at those little details, the finer details, where we can start kind of building in pulse and feeling and a kind of heartbeat into music. So I always like to take schottisches for this. I always find schottisches lend themselves very nicely to a buzzing pulse. Schottisch Avamoo is going around my brain at the moment. So again, bringing you down on the bog roll, all of the fancy stuff here. If somebody's out there that would like to carve me a beautiful wooden hollow kind of camera holder, because that's what I use it for. I would really dearly love that, because it would just look so much better than a bog roll. So Shoti Shavamu, I'll try and play it quite straight without any pulse, and then hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing differently in my instrument, in my body. So. I'll leave it at 1B. I tried my best just to play it straight, but I realized there were a few little dragged chords and things like that, which is something that people have kind of typically said is something that I do. It's kind of part of my style, and particularly in Shotishas, it just gives that little chug on the offbeat that I quite like. So beat 2 and beat 4, where those chords fall. So there's different ways of adding pulse in. There's bellows pulse. There's chopping notes up, so actually separating notes out. Maybe they're the two main ones, just off the top of my head. So in that tune, what I was trying to do was hold on to the sounds as much as possible. Oh, that was the other one, note length. So we've got whether we're going to separate long notes into shorter notes and make them smaller, I call them micro beats. Whether we're going to use the bellows to kind of add this beating kind of pulse under long notes, or whether we're going to read a crotchet but actually play it as a quaver, if that makes sense. So you actually, the sound element of the crotchet is half its length, the other half is given over to be silence. So it's not like we're making the beat smaller. The beat is this size, but half of it is sound and the other half is silent. So what we can try and do, if we're playing in 4/4, it's a nice easy time signature to demonstrate lots of things. 4/4, Shotish is in 4/4. If we think about it as 8/8, so if we take those 4 crotchets and split them, they each become 2 quavers. So if I demonstrate, this is our crotchet rhythm. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So it's very long sounds. If we chop those up, each one in half, what we end up with is this, what I call microbeat rhythm or quaver rhythm. So we're going to end up with 8 quavers. So for me, it demonstrates an easy way of creating pulse. You know, instantly that feels like you've got more hooks to hang things off of. If we've just got 4 hooks in the bar, it's kind of heavy. Those hooks become quite heavy. You know, we can hang a lot of stuff off them. But if we have 8 hooks, they're lighter, it's frothier, the fingers can move quicker, so it means there's more silence in the bar overall. So we've got to think about that split, that divide between the sound and the silence. And what I mean by that is the slivers of silence in between the notes. So just mucking about, that was just me chopping up notes. I was also doing a little bit of note length stuff. So let's look at that in more detail. We can lengthen notes and we can shorten notes.
we don't really want to lengthen anything here. We've got our crotchet beat. So if we're going to play a crotchet and we want it to be the full length of its beat of sound, we're going to play that sound long. That's generally with the chords. So the notes that come with the chords in a schottische, we want them to be a little bit longer and kind of start tying into the note that will fit with the bass. The bass, on the alternate hand, they're shorter and choppier. So the bass wants to be really stabby, and the chord you can linger on. So you start to get this. So really strictly trying to stick to that long note, short note thing. So every note with the bass, phrasingly, or the phrases of that tune to me don't seem to want that all the time. But as a blanket coverage, it's a really good practice technique to take that short bass, long chord, match that with the notes that fit here and put it over the whole tune. Learn how to do that everywhere across the whole tune. And then as you play that, you'll naturally you'll feel where the notes want to be longer. So if I just let myself free with that a little bit. So for instance, that third beat, I want to land there heavily. Same there. Now, I could start going down other alleyways. I'll leave it there for a second. What I was going to say, and I'll just say it, is you don't always have to have, if you're going to have a long note on the right hand, you don't always have to have a long bass to accompany it. So what I mean is you can have a short stabby bass, but the note remains long. So you could end up with... You see how this left hand is always really punchy and stabby, but the right hand is giving out the long notes. Now, I call that micro coordination because it means that the right hand is doing something different rhythmically to the left hand, and that takes some practice and some work for sure. But a simple exercise to try it with, just take a G and a G bass and chord and just try. Yeah. So what I'm trying there, practicing my short bass, long chord, but my long crotchet note on my right hand. Now, the last thing to talk about, you asked about, is bellows pulse. So yeah, think of this as just a little oscillation. Love long words, they're falling out of me tonight. Oscillation of the bellows. So we're not looking to sort of waggle it too much. It's just a little up and down jiggle. And as long as there's forward pressure, i.e. you're pushing air into the reed, can you hear? It's really subtle. You might mistake it for tremolo, but this is quite a dry instrument. If I put it on my octave tuning. Yeah, so I'm starting to build this little pulse. Now, what we're looking for in that pulse is our micro beat, our quaver rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and ba 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 ba. I realised that's my crotchet rhythm. So maybe there's some. That's how I would play it. Up and down and up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So I'm finding that I'm getting that quaver rhythm just in the up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's my 8 beats, my 8/8. A bit of a whistle-stop tour there of pulse and rhythm, but hopefully that will, you can pause this video and kind of go back and work on stuff, and see how you get on with it.
put it into 100 days of practice, or just a day of practice, or just 10 minutes of practice. You'll start to kind of work that stuff out for yourself. And it is very much, it's how the left hand is not only actioning the buttons and the air button, but it's starting, the wrist is starting to get a little bit sensitive and what's the word? Kind of expressive. That's the word. So you're trying to kind of get a little bit of expression out of the wrist, and bodily movement is going to jolt that air, which is in turn going to jolt the vibrations coming out of the reed. So you'll start to see that. But I think it's quite a slow burn technique. It took me 2 years or something like that before I felt like it was happening naturally. And I don't think I worked solely on it. I just played with a lot of people and listened to a lot of music where that was happening. So naturally, and watching a lot of players, I learned a lot through watching, sitting in pubs, watching people, picking up all sorts of little techniques that are difficult to put into words. I have managed that as a teacher. I think one of my strengths is able to take concepts and break it down and kind of, oh, this is how he's doing that, let me show you. But just watching people and just trying to match their movement, so Andy Cutting's left hand, we talked about it in a workshop with him. Somebody actually had to sit in front of him and watch really, really closely on his left hand to see how he was affecting that pulse. And I've kind of, I suppose, adopted his method of doing that, really, really subtle little up and down. So yeah, if you see Andy, or go and watch some videos, really study his bellows movement and his left hand wrist, have a little weirdo kind of moment with his left hand wrist and just kind of check out what he's doing and try and mimic that, play around with that in your own box. So I've overrun. I knew this was going to happen by cutting it down, but actually this has been the most productive Q&A. We've had a lot of questions and answers. I might not have got round to all of them, so I apologize if that's the case, but yeah, I feel that there's way more content in this half an hour, which is useful to people. So I'll be back in March, and yeah, please keep an eye on my 100 days of practice project. As I said, go and have a little look at my my new video uploaded about an hour ago. Like it, share it, subscribe to my channel, and you'll be seeing my very first day one of 100 days in tomorrow. I've got some time tomorrow. I'm going to do it. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for taking part tonight, and I will see you somewhere soon.